So as soon as this news broke yesterday, you wrote in a note that Amazon is bluffing.
Yes.
Do you think that there is still hope?
Absolutely. So first off, I think Amazon is an incredibly shrewd company when it comes to working with governments, both local governments and federal governments in the U.S. and outside the U.S. So this to me sounds like an effort by the company essentially to get the government of New York back to the negotiating table. So I do believe they're bluffing.
For yet more incentives? What would they be looking for at this point?
Well, I think at this point they're looking for basically support. Support from the governor, support from the mayor. So I think what you have here is essentially a loud minority that's pushing back on Amazon coming to New York. And I think New York is a huge strategic priority for Amazon for a lot of reasons, not just because it gives them access to talent, being the largest city in the US, but also it advances their efforts in media and advertising when you think about what is local to New York.
You know, they were pretty clear, though, in their statement. They said state and local politicians have made it clear that they oppose our presence and will not work with us to build the type of relationships that are required to go forward with the project. How much of this was about Amazon trying not to tarnish its reputation outside of the city and outside of this project?
Sure. So I would argue that when they had 20 cities get into the hunt for HQ2, and they ultimately only selected 2/3, depending how you think about Nashville, there was already negative attention on Amazon. They turned down 18 cities. So again, I think it's hard to imagine that they didn't anticipate any pushback. So again, that's why I think, and then this may be minutia, but the announcement was on a blog post. Whereas when they announced HQ2, it was an official press release. So again, it all feels like body language to me on Amazon that this story isn't over yet.
If they were to do it all over again, you think they'd be so public about trying to find a home for HQ2?
I do think that there are things that they would do differently. And if you compare and contrast the way Apple did with ultimately adding Austin, Texas, very different, a lot less in the public eye. And I do think that Amazon may have learned from some of their mistakes this time.
New York State Senator Michael Gianaris has been a very vocal opponent of this. And he actually called Amazon yesterday a petulant child, the way they've been reacting. Would you agree with that assessment?
So here's my view on that. So a local politician who thinks Amazon coming to New York is a bad thing, I think that's an incredibly short-sighted view. For example, if you think about Seattle, just imagine what Seattle looked like 10 years ago, even 20 years ago, and what it looks like today. And think about what Amazon would mean to New York City, not just over the next 10 years, but over the next 25 years. So I think it's very short-sighted, the pushback you're seeing from government officials on Amazon.
Do you think this is a turning point for corporate and civic relationships right now in the way cities and states may think about giving incentive programs?
So definitely I think there's two challenges here. One, if this is in fact an official decision by Amazon to pull out, I would view it as a loss, given that I think it negatively affects their strategy. And I'm not ready to say that all cities aren't interested in giving incentives for companies to come. I'm work in New York but live in Connecticut, and losing GE to Massachusetts was very damaging to Connecticut. So I anticipate this will still go on with states trying to get companies to move into their state.
You think these local politicians who opposed it so vehemently are going to get some backlash from
absolutely. And I think the mayor will get backlash, and I think the governor will get backlash. So I think a lot of this was posturing, is posturing, and I still think it's posturing on both sides, the government official side and the company side, which is, again, why I think it's not over yet. You
are still bullish on Amazon. You have a buy rating on the stock, a price target of $24.50. Regardless of whether or not they come to New York, you're still that bullish on the company.
I am. Although, again, I do think that this could negatively affect their efforts potentially in advertising and media and their ability to attract talent. And it's that ability to continue to attract talent to Amazon that will enable them to sustain their elevated growth rate, which basically drives their stock.